Hello everybody and welcome to the channel and another instalment of Jono's Graveyard Jaunts. If you are enjoying the content of the channel so far, can I please ask you to like and subscribe so the channel can grow and we can jointly visit ever more interesting places that are further afield. Thank you. The word suffragette, according to the dictionary, means a woman seeking the right to vote through organised protest. A suffragist can apply to both men and women, but essentially with the objective in mind that's the same: more votes for more people, especially that of women. The word suffragette in the UK was really synonymous with the Pankhurst family, who were all very politically active in the movement. The Pankhursts were from a very working class area in Moss Side, Manchester in the UK, which is in the northwest part of the country. However, Leicester itself produced a real trailblazer in the Suffragette Movement, a woman by the name of Alice Hawkins, who subsequently formed the Women's Social and Political Union in conjunction with Sylvia Pankhurst after a meeting in Leicester. Alice was born in Stafford in 1863 into a very working class family with the surname Riley, and then the family subsequently moved to Leicester, where Alice and her family spent most of her life there. Alice in turn left school at 13 and went to work in a shoe factory, and by the early 20s Alice was a boot and shoe machinist at Erected Shoes, which is on Western Road in the City of Leicester. Now, Erected Shoes was formed initially as a cooperative, with workers getting a share of the company profits. In 1882, Alice married Albert Hawkins, acquiring his surname, and they had 6 children together. Albert himself was also a suffragist, and he also assisted Alice in her endeavours with the movement. Now, poor working conditions at the time in factories and elsewhere in 1894 were both very much the norm for men and women alike. Alice in turn joined the Independent Labour Party, where she met Sylvia Pankhurst, who Alice in turn supplied data to about the Equity Shoe Factory where Alice worked in Leicester, in order that Sylvia could write articles about women's working lives. Alice soon realised there was a huge disparity between working conditions and pay for both men and women in the workplace, and she intended to rectify it via the movement. The following month, Alice herself invited Sylvia Pankhurst to speak in Leicester. It was after this meeting that the Women's Social and Political Union were formed by both Alice and Sylvia jointly. Alice in turn became secretary of the first Leicester branch of the Women's Social and Political Union, and Alice was jailed for the first time for attending such a meeting in February of 1907 after a march on the House of Commons, where she was among 29 women sent to Holloway Prison in London. Now, Alice became a real trailblazer at this point, and she went on a tireless campaign of speaking at village greens outside of factory gates, getting women from all walks of life to join the suffragette cause. And Alice in turn was jailed 5 times over 7 years for her militant actions, which included chaining herself to a railing, throwing a stone through the Home Office window, and making a disturbance when Winston Churchill held a Liberal meeting at the Palace Theatre in Leicester. Now, with the onset of World War I, Alice obviously ceased all suffragette activity in 1914 to support the war effort, and she never again returned to suffragette activities. Alice herself died in 1946, aged 83 years, and she was in turn buried at Welford Road Cemetery in Leicester in a pauper's grave, which had to be paid for by the state. Equity Shoes itself, where Alice worked most of her life and where she in turn became the president of the union, finally closed in 2009 after 123 years in business, with the subsequent loss of 98 jobs. The original structure and ornate archway above the entrance to the factory still exists to this present day, with the placard of Alice Hawkins displayed on the outside of the building. This building is now, however, part of De Montfort University's Student Union accommodation. In 2018, a 7-foot statue of Alice Hawkins was erected in her memory at the former Market Square in Leicester, and this in turn was witnessed by Dr Helen Pankhurst of the Pankhurst Dynasty and the local MP for Leicester West, Liz Kendall, amongst others. And Alice's great-grandchildren's abiding memory of her was to hear Alice herself utter the words, "You must use your vote, we suffered for it." And that message is still true today as it was back then. So we're just coming up to the grave of Alice Hawkins, and just to give you a bit of background on Alice's grave, she was basically buried here obviously in 1946 when she passed away, but the family and all the relatives clubbed together to get Alice Hawkins a very nice headstone in 2012. So this is obviously a relatively recent headstone that was added in 2012, and bearing in mind Alice passed away in 1946, and we're just coming up to it now, and it's that black stone we can see just on the right hand side. I'm going to go up to it. There's some really interesting words on there that are entirely appropriate for the late great Alice Hawkins. So here we are. Alice Hawkins, 1863 to 1946, a loving wife and mother, leader of the women's suffrage movement in Leicester, a sister of freedom. So thank you, Alice, for all that you've done for the greater good, for the cause of women, and you certainly lived a long, prosperous, eventful and indeed purposeful life, and I hope you're finally resting in peace.